Well, welcome, folks, to another session of the Soil Health Nexus Digital Cafe. Very excited to have you on. My name is Christine Charles. I am an educator with MSU Extension, just based in Southwest Michigan. Cover topics related to regenerative agriculture and conservation practices in field crop systems. I am I work a lot with Christina, which she will be on in a little bit, but um, yes, definitely predecessor, or she's my predecessor, I guess is what you would say. So who are we if this is your first time joining us or it's been a while? Soil Health Nexus is a university-led team dedicated to increasing access to research-based soil health knowledge, extension, and resources. We have representatives across all 12 North Central region states in the Midwest, and many folks who are involved outside of that region or outside of the university system. So we're excited to have you with us this afternoon. So to break it down a little bit more, we'll have our presentation, which very excited for our presenter today. And we'll open it up for question and answers from all the attendees, all of you guys. And then we'll have a variety of breakout rooms that you can choose to discuss the presentation topic based on your roles. So those rooms will again open up towards the end of the digital cafe session today. So without further ado, I want to welcome our speaker this afternoon, Dr. Claire Friedrichsen from the USDA ARS. She will be talking to us about soil health and well-being. Thank you so much for joining us, Claire. And did I say your last name correctly, Friedrichsen?
Uh, yes, Friedrichsen. Thank you. I was just thinking that picture is from South Africa. I had no idea how you got it, but I was excited to be remembering that moment.
We got good people doing deep cuts. Well,
Oh,
feel free to take it away.
oh, thank you for inviting me to speak today. My name is Claire Friedrichsen. I'll be talking about the connection between soil health and well-being, and I'll be sharing research that we've been doing as part of the long-term agroecosystem research network for the last 7 years. I am a research scientist with the Agricultural Research Service. I always like to give a plug-in for my agency because I didn't know it existed before I started working for them. Um, the Agricultural Research Service is the research branch of USDA, and we deliver scientific solutions to national and global agricultural challenges, and we provide global leadership in agricultural discoveries through scientific excellence. We have 90 locations across the United States, and I was hired to serve North Dakota and Alaska. I am one of two social scientists in the Agricultural Research Service, so we are very few in number. Um, I am located at the Northern Great Plains Research Laboratory, and my colleague Courtney Hammond Wagner, who is a co-author and co-lead and co-PI on this research, is located in Burlington, Vermont at the Food Systems Research Unit. I come from this background of kind of trying to walk the line between soils and humans. I have an undergraduate degree in soil science from the University of Missouri. I have a master's degree in food anthropology and a PhD in soil science, but I really focused on human dimensions or kind of the sociology of soil. My main areas of focus are participatory action research, increasing access to culturally significant foods, the connection between well-being and adoption, and stakeholder engagement. I want to give a huge shout out to all of the co-authors and also to the LTAR Human Dimensions Working Group, which has been supportive of this research for the last 7 years. So the co-authors, this research touches upon 4 different manuscripts And the co-authors from those are Courtney Hammond Wagner, Will Jones, Hannah Poplinsky, J.D. Wolfhorst, Aaliyah DeLong, Haley Wilmer, Cheryl Haggins, Zachariasen, Maren Friesen, Carol McFarland, Haiying Tao, Toshi Mizuto, Glenna Gannon, and Tong Wang. So thank you to all of them. Today I'm going to be talking about this blue quadrant in the figure here. So during my PhD studies, we talked a lot about ecosystem services, but we didn't really define and really didn't understand what the cultural services were from soil. In soil science, we've used a lot of different jargon or different words to try to explain kind of this more social, intangible part of soil management. So a lot of different vocabulary that you might hear that's all related to hopefully what I'm talking about today is non-economic value of soil, nature's contributions to people, cultural ecosystem services, social benefits, non-material, intangible benefits, cultural benefits, well-being outcomes, embedded values, relational values, plural values, and multiple benefits. Okay, now digging into what we're really here for and excited for. We're here to talk about well-being. I look specifically at subjective well-being. Subjective well-being is a self-evaluation of an individual's lived experience and is inclusive of how they live within their environment and their perceived capacity to grow, flourish, function, and contribute to their community. I want to point out a couple of connections here. So subjective well-being is someone's own interpretation of their well-being. So unlike more objective measures of happiness, which might look at how much money you have, your income, what your material wealth status is, what your education level status is, to determine how happy you are. Subjective well-being instead looks at how does someone evaluate their own life to see if they're happy. And also its well-being is in relationship with the environment. So it's not something separate, that it recognizes that in order to be well, you do have to have a relationship with the environment. That well-being is about accomplishing your own goals. It's about growth. And it's also about contributing to a community and being part of a group of human beings. For this research, it's grounded in the theory of self-determination. In social sciences, just like in natural sciences, we have theories. And these theories are based upon years and years of data, significant hypothesis testing to come up with these. So just like the theory of gravity, in social science, we have theories about how people behave and why they behave in a certain way. Today, I'll be talking specifically about self-determination theory, which was developed by Ryan and Deci. And they say that in order for humans to be well, they have to have three basic needs: competence, autonomy, and relatedness. So competence is the need to be effective in dealing with the environment. Autonomy is the need to control the direction of our own lives. Relatedness is the need to have a close, affectionate relationship with others. So these are the three kind of basic tenets they outline as well-being. Self-determination theory then tries to link well-being to behavior. And so they look at three different types of motivation for people to kind of actualize a behavior. You're either amotivated, so you have no intention of doing a specific behavior. You can be extrinsically motivated, so through external demands such as rewards or punishment or guilt, you'll do behavior. For example, for me, I don't have a dishwasher, so hand washing my dishes really is motivated by guilt. It's not something I do out of pleasure. I do it out of guilt that as a human being, I have to wash my dishes. And finally, intrinsic motivation. So this is behaviors that are done out of pure interest, curiosity, challenge, enjoyment. For me, these are my hobbies, such as hiking and cooking. And what self-determination theory says is, as a behavior contributes to your competence, autonomy, and relatedness, it then moves you from being amotivated to being intrinsically motivated to do a behavior. So the more a behavior contributes to your sense of competence, autonomy, and relatedness, the more likely you're going to be intrinsically motivated to do the behavior, and thus don't need external rewards and are more likely to sustain it and not drop a behavior. I was first excited for this research and this research line when I came across an article by Gosnell in 2019 in Australia, and they were trying to look at the relationship between well-being and regenerative agriculture. And so they saw that sense of community and public recognition were associated with regenerative agriculture. And then they looked to see if there was a correlation, and they found that there was a higher correlation of producers who did regenerative agricultural practices did have higher well-being. What's kind of stumped us in the social sciences is that it's really hard to measure subjective well-being, especially related to like tasks, very specific tasks. So there really isn't a tool that is able to look at, does this in-field management practice that I'm doing in the field, does it actually contribute to my well-being or not? I'll start talking about kind of the context of this research and the group that I've been working with for the last 7 years. I've been working with the Long-Term Agroecosystem Research Network, which is a network of 19 different research sites across the United States. These are research farms that have field-level experiments where they're comparing an alternative practice to a prevailing practice in a region and trying to develop alternative practices that support sustainability. And so the question we've been trying to figure out is, how can we help develop alternative practices that promote not only productivity and environmental sustainability, but also sustainability for producers and their communities. So the question we've been trying to answer is, how do we integrate producer and community well-being into the LTAR research as an intentional outcome? As part of that research process, we developed a vision or a framework of sustainability indicators that'll help develop this new alternative practices. And so we're trying to figure out, how do we balance and integrate economic production, natural resource, and society sustainability together within alternative practices? And then how do we measure our progress towards achieving kind of a balance and sustainability in all of those 4 domains? And so today, from now on, I'll be talking about kind of these 2 yellow pie figures, and how we develop those and how we want to move forward with trying to measure progress towards those. So this research started in 2019. I did a case study looking at how producers perceive their own well-being as it connects to soil health. That data was collected in 2019. And then we expanded kind of the scope, because that was just in a specific region. So then we expanded to the entire United States for a sampling frame and looked at how producers perceive soil health as connected to community well-being. Then we developed a framework for understanding how soil health connects to well-being and use that to develop the sustainability indicators framework. And then the last couple of years, we've been trying to figure out if we can quantitatively measure that. So I'll touch upon that work, which we're still working on right now. So our research questions are, how do we integrate well-being into the design of the LTAR Common Experiment? And how does in-field management choices impact well-being of producers and their communities? And how do we measure well-being outcomes of in-field management choices? So the first study, which we collected the data in 2019 and 2020, was to better understand the connection between producers' individual well-being and their soil health management. We interviewed 11 wheat producers in the Pacific Northwest. And from those interviews, we had identified 5 different dimensions of well-being. And so the producers saw a strong connection between their soil health and their own self-actualization, esteem, connectedness, self-determination, and mental health. I'm a qualitative researcher, which means I usually use words instead of numbers. And so I'll share with you a few quotes from these studies. So the first quote talks about individual well-being and its connection between soil health and a producer's sense of autonomy or freedom. Participant 6 said that freedom from synthetic input applications. We can change our workflow, spread the workload, potentially based on the timing of our crops. If you have a cover crop, maybe you don't need to go out and spray. You don't need to be there. So more family time, less time tied to the farm, greater flexibility. And the second quote I'll share from this study looks at the connection between soil health and mental health. Participant 3 said, if your soil is in good shape, then you don't wake up in the middle of the night when there's a rainstorm and you know that the ground's frozen and you'll have horrendous erosion events. A healthy farmer as far as just emotional well-being and reducing the stress. So that first study kind of gave us a taste of, yeah, there is this connection between soil health and producer well-being. And so then we started to collect data to look kind of at a broader breadth of how soil health might not just be impacting producer well-being, but also the well-being of their communities. So we did that by collecting producers' perceptions of how their soil management impacted their community. We conducted interviews with 42 underrepresented producers across the continental United States. We mainly focused on, they were all commodity producers. And from these interviews, we identified 3 dimensions of community well-being. Those dimensions are connections, capabilities, and conditions. So producers perceived that there was soil health increased the sense of place for their community. It also supported social relationships. It was able to provide more opportunities and supporting social diversity and integrity in their community. That soil health also served as a feedback loop. It was a way for producers to communicate to consumers what they're doing for their environmental stewardship. And it was a way for consumers to really understand what their producers were doing. And so it served as this communication feedback. And then also stewardship for their community resources. The next one was capabilities. And so the participants saw soil health as contributing to knowledge and technology in their community, recreation and tourism, political participation in civil society, and resource management and services. And finally, producers saw that soil health contributed to the conditions of their community by supplying food and basic needs, supporting disaster preparedness, supporting safety, local and informal economies, and employment and income. 2 quotes from this study. The first quote is an example of how soil health contributes to community condition through safety and disaster preparedness. Participant 9 said, all of our neighbors started realizing, hey, we need to do something here. We needed to begin no-tilling because there was this massive dirt storm. People got killed on the highways because of all the dirt blowing off the field. So my husband got on board with this no-till technique, and many of the neighbors have also gotten on board. The second quote I'll share with you talks about how soil health contributes to community capability through political participation in civil society. Participant 30 said, it's just actually having an open relationship with our neighbors about what we're doing, soil health, and different things. My brother has sat on our county soil board, and I sit on the Farm Bureau board. We try to put ourselves in the spots to grow for our farm and learn and be part of others. So from these two studies, we identified 7 different domains of well-being, 4 being individual well-being, and 3 being community well-being, and then I believe there's 29 subdimensions. And you'll kind of see these individual well-being kind of get grouped in different categories across the studies as we continue to learn about this process. So the third study is a soil health and well-being scale. I am co-PI, and my fantastic colleague Courtney Hammond-Wagner is the other PI on the study. It was accepted with major revisions, so we're still going through it, so it's not quite published, but I'm excited to share it with you and get your thoughts. I'm not the statistician, so I will kind of stumble through the statistics, but hopefully we can talk about the findings. So we wanted to develop a Likert scale, so one of those lovely things that we all hate that says, to what degree do you agree or disagree with the following statements from 1 to 5? So we decided to make one of those scales to try to measure this connection between soil health and well-being. We went through 3 different steps, which was item development, skill development, and then scale evaluation. And then we've developed an 18-item list, so it's 18 different statements that you're agreeing or disagreeing with, and then a shorter 6-item scale. So the reason why we wanted to do this was other studies have looked at, okay, what are the infield management practices? And what is the happiness of a producer? And then they try to control for a few variables. But unfortunately, what we're doing in the field and how happy we are, there's a lot going on in our lives, and it's hard to control for all of those variables. And the impact of what's happening in the field and how happy you are might just be a slight difference because of how sensitive the tools are. So we wanted to create a tool that kind of looks at what is a producer's perception of how their infield management practices impacts their well-being as a more direct way to measure this relationship. And so we took this framework from the 2 qualitative studies, and we developed all of those lovely statements that you have to agree to disagree for each of these domains and subdomains. We then took them to a panel of experts who were people known for soil health, and had them read over the statements and got their feedback on if they were relevant, if they actually portrayed well-being and improving the wording of those. We also worked with 2 producers who generously gave their time and helped work through wording of those statements. And then we developed a survey. We sampled USDA employees who self-identified as also being a farmer or a producer. So they answered yes to the question, I have grown, sold, foraged, traded, or produced at least $1,000 of agricultural products in 2023. So we tested 81 potential statements or items. We did the survey twice, once in June and once in November, to be able to compare to see if there was a difference between when producers might be outside and interacting with soil and when producers are probably at home and not thinking and interacting with soil as much. Both of these surveys had about 300 respondents to them. We then analyzed this data and we did exploratory factor analysis with survey 1, and we identified 6 domains of well-being, 3 of them being individual and 3 of them being community well-being domains of well-being. And then we did a confirmatory factor analysis and to see if the survey 2 agreed with survey 1 on those kind of domain levels. And then we selected items from each of those domains to theoretically represent each of the domains. So we ended up with 18 of those lovely Likert statements. And we also made a short version, which is 6 items. So we wanted to see, okay, does this tool actually measure well-being? And so we correlated it to other known well-being measurement tools in agriculture. And so it has a positive correlation with farmer occupational well-being, social outcomes of agriculture, and farm level satisfaction. Great, it's also negatively correlated to agricultural stress. And then it's also positively correlated to personal well-being index, which is a well-being index used by the WHO and the life satisfaction scale. We then wanted to see, okay, are we really able to see a difference between producers who are practicing soil health versus producers who are not practicing soil health? So we had asked the participants to what percentage of their land they were able to actualize for soil health principles. And we were able to see a correlation that the more land a producer had within the soil health principle, the higher their well-being was. And that was true for both the 18 and the 6 item. Okay, so we're starting to see, okay, yes, maybe we can measure the relationship between in-field management practice and well-being, which is really exciting. Just to go over our timeline, we started this work in 2019 with qualitative interviews, trying to understand this relationship. We kind of broadened it to a nationwide survey sample and looked at a larger scope of how farmers see this relationship to the well-being of their communities. Then we developed a sustainability indicator framework that helps LTAR develop alternative practices that support all dimensions of sustainability. And then we've been trying to figure out if we can actually measure this relationship quantitatively. So this year we're pilot studying several different measurement tools to measure well-being and several different ways to measure in-field management practices of soil health. And so my colleague Tong did a soil health survey last summer with 2025, and we'll look at that data to see if there's a relationship. And then we are currently collecting data in Alaska to look at this relationship to see if it exists. So some takeaways that I hope you take away from this presentation is that soil health contributes to the adoption soil health contributes to a producer's well-being, and that there's really like three ways to think about this when we're thinking about talking about soil health and designing new techniques or alternative practices that support soil health. That soil health is more likely to be adopted if it contributes to a producer's sense of competence. So is it optimally challenging? Enough challenging to be that you want to tinker and play with it, not so challenging that it's impossible to do, and that it's enhanced by positive performance feedback. So producers are able to see in their soil health test that they do every year a change in microbials or a change in their soil organic carbon, something that helps them see, yes, I'm on the right track. Their sense of competence is really impacted by an excessive challenge. So something that just really is impossible to achieve, and then also receiving negative performance feedback. Um, Soil health adoption can be supported by the sense of autonomy. Supporting producers with the ability to have choice of a suite of different practices, providing an explanation or a rationale behind these different practices, and then acknowledgement of feelings that this is difficult, and it's undermined by more tangible rewards. So maybe cost sharing is impacting this. I don't know. Something to look at. Threats, deadlines, regulations, imposed goals or controls kind of undermines this sense of well-being and sense of intrinsic motivation. And finally, soil health can contribute to a producer's sense of relatedness. So it's increased by having respect and care. So soil and water conservation districts that highlight producers that are doing a good job, that create these inclusive spaces for learning and for sharing about soil health. And that it's undermined by a sense of competition or criticism or really cliquey in groups that are like the only soil health producers in a region. So the more that we're able to kind of create and talk about soil health practices as they support kind of these three buckets, the more producers are more likely to be intrinsically motivated to continue soil health practices. And then something fun that I like to do, this December, I went to our soil and water conservation conference, and the soil and water heroes that one in each county came up and talked about why they did soil conservation. And it was fun for me to sit there and pick out all of these pieces of how it contributed to their well-being. And so sit and listen and really think about how are these all contributing to our sense of well-being. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you.